Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft, and today I'm going to show you how to do this lovely monochrome sketch of a wolf from the UK Wolf Trust, where I've been many times, and got this photograph a couple of years ago of a young wolf called Nuka. So we're going to be using hard black and white pastels like this, and a sheet of dark grey velour paper. So this is what the finished sketch will look like. So I'm just going to peel that off, and this is my preparatory sketch. Now, I always do my preparatory sketches in white or ivory in case I need to go over something, make some changes, rub some lines out and so on. It was easier to rub away the white or the ivory, as you can see that it is black, because velour holds pastel very well, so it's very difficult to rub it out. So once I've got my proportional sketch started, then I want to do a reasonable sketch using the hard black pastel to get shape and a little bit more form. Don't forget, of course, you can order the pre-lined velour, the full set with the velour, pre-lined velour, the reference photograph and the pastels by going on the website, details of which will be coming up later. So let's begin the sketch by concentrating on the important bits, the face, eye, nose and mouth, etc. Using a slightly rounded corner of my hard black pastel. Don't worry at this stage if you haven't got all the fine details correct. What I always like to do is begin with just a fairly rough sketch, or a reasonable sketch at least, and then refine it bit by bit, add layers bit by bit. So we'll just pop the pupil in position there, and let's do the nostril next. So the nostril line going down here. What I don't want to do in this is I'm just going to do a little outline of the lower part of the nose, but what I don't want to do is an outline all the way round, because I'm going to have some light coming in from the right hand side which will highlight his nose and other areas. So if I do that outline with black, it might be a little bit more difficult to get that crisp highlight on later. So let's get the angle of the mouth. And remember, you don't have to rigidly stick to your preparatory sketch if you're doing this freehand. It's only there as a guide for proportions. Just fill that in lightly. The key thing when you're working with pastels on velour is to start off reasonably light, build up the tones, build up the detail bit by bit. So if you start off too heavy, especially with a black pastel, then you'll find it's a lot more difficult to paint over it or to remove it. You'll always get traces of it underlying. So if I rub this now, you can see the black pastel is virtually staying as it is. So other details, we've got the eye, nose and the mouth, well, the details in the eye, nose and mouth sketched in. Let's begin with some fur around the eye. So we've got a little ridge of fur just going down from the corner of the eye. At this point I like to think of it as a fur map. So in other words, looking at the length and the direction and the thickness of the fur, quite short fur around here of course, and the shapes they produce. So in our grey wolf, the Nuka is a grey wolf, then we have all these little sections of darker fur and lighter fur and so on. So I've marked out these little sections roughly to start with. So I'm just getting some texture in there, reasonably short texture. As you go, as you work through it, just give it a little rub with the side of the finger perhaps. That just pushes the pastel into the paper, so it makes it stick. So you never have to use any fixative or hairspray or anything like that. Also, it just softens your marks a little bit. So we've got this overhanging ridge where the eyebrow is, casting a shadow underneath. So that needs to be a little bit darker. And remember, of course, when you're working from reference photographs, you don't have to rigidly stick to your photograph. You can adapt it. You can make it softer, you can make it sketchier, you can add highlights and so on. So this is what we're going to be doing with this one. I'm going to add some atmospheric highlights and a little bit of atmospheric background too. So continue with the fur map. Going down the side of the face here we have slightly longer, thicker chunks of fur, and we can describe those by basically negative drawing. That's drawing the spaces or sketching the spaces in between those lighter clumps of thicker fur. So hanging down below the ear. The ear itself is around here, so I'm not going to do all the ear. My plan is on here because it's going to be a just an atmospheric sketch really. I'm going to let the ear fade out into the corner and concentrate all our details around the head and the face. The important bit probably. So finishing off down here, I'll put some darker shadows in that corner as well later on. So a little bit of texture below the ear where the ear joins the head. So we have a little ridge of fur where the ear meets the head, going in that sort of direction, and a couple more ridges at the base of the ear. You can see we're marking out this sort of thick clumpy fur around the base of the ear, which form these little ridges. And the centre of the ear is about here, the dark centre. The back of the ear, again slightly furry edge, going into that darker shadow. So it's always a good idea, I think, to, when you start a painting or a sketch or anything really, is to have an idea of what the environment is, what the story is, and so on. So I'm imagining Nuka here is coming out of a dark wooded area early in the morning, way up in the forests of Canada or Alaska or somewhere like that, and emerging into an early morning cold misty light with the forest in the background. So we'll come to that in a second. First of all, let's just do a little bit of short fur just above the eye. This is really just making some little textured stabs because that fur is very, very short around the top of the head. So we just want to see a little bit of texture. It's basically going up that way, but in this case it doesn't really matter if you do it from the top or from the bottom. We just want to see some texture. We can add to the texture later on. Continue just above the eye. Let that fade out around the ear and fading out up here. So try to create a nice soft misty effect around the edges. That should do it. And then once we've got all those bits in, we can then begin to add some tone. So tone will give us form. Once you've done your lines, your sketchy lines, it's still looking quite flat of course, and tone will give it three-dimensional form. So if you have a dark tone, mid-tone and light tone on anything, could be a ball, a vase, a wolf, anything. Dark tone, mid-tone and light tone gives you form. And if you're doing something like this, a monochrome sketch, or even a monochrome painting to completion, then you can always treat it as an underpainting for adding layers of colour over the top. So over the top of this, when you finish, you can glaze some light layers of colour over it, appropriate colours, browns, blues, greys and so on, and all the tones you have set at this stage will affect the colour you put on the top. So you can get dark browns, dark blues, light browns and so on. So that's just a soft outline of the fur on top of his head, a little bit more rounded there. Remember, we can add to it later on. And now we'll begin to add some tonal values. There's a little shadow underneath the eyebrow there, I think. So adding tonal values, we'll be using the side of the hard black pastel. If we start in the corner, so I'm going to press fairly hard for this. I'm going to grab hold of the board, and I want that corner to fade away. And if your corners fade away into a darker area, it keeps the viewer interested or focused on what's going on in the centre of the painting. So we'll have that faded away, and we'll have the dark centre of the ear a little bit darker here, and again the fur below the ear. Around that, we'll push those edges away into the corner. And remember, it's better to do 2 or 3 light layers you've got a much softer effect and you control your tones. If you go too heavy, too quick, and you decide it's too dark, there's not much you can do to get it back. So always err on the side of caution, build up the layers bit by bit, and as I say, the effect will be much softer anyway. That's all those lovely dark shadows, give them a good rub. Now we'll do a reasonably light tone for the mid-tone grey fur and add some darks again when we want it. So brushing our pastel over the mid-grey fur, which is most of it apart from the muzzle, and little patches around here, so any lighter bits of fur you can leave. So little hints, so cheekbone just below the eye, that comes towards us visually, so that should be lighter. Anything that's further away, like under the cheekbone, will be slightly darker. This is a great way of creating underlying anatomical form, where you've got muscle, bone, teeth and so on underneath. You can start to see the hollows and the highlights. So coming down from the corner of the eye, where the tear duct is, and down the snout. And we can keep this fairly flat. Of course the velour paper has that lovely velvety texture anyway, and if you've got short fur, like on the wolf's snout or even a horse's nose, something like that, you don't have to worry about fur texture, because the paper will give you that feeling, that effect. So around the tip of the nose, now never forget that the tip of the nose is joined to the top and the bottom of the snout, so we want that tone to follow through. Don't just isolate the tip of the nose and tone that in, or you run the danger of it looking like a plastic nose that's been stuck on like a cuddly toy or something. So that's our first light layer, which gives us a mid-tone, a light layer of black, apart from these darker areas in the corner. So now we'll have a second layer to get things even darker. So for example, the tip of the nose should be darker. Don't worry about going over the edge or creating a soft edge, a blurred edge, because we can sharpen that up later with the highlight. A little bit darker underneath the top lip, and maybe a little bit darker in the tear duct. Remember, the tear duct is like a channel, so it has darker edges and a lighter bit in the middle where the moisture runs down. And a little bit darker under this ridge of fur coming down here, which again brings that part forward, pushing that part away. So when you're doing a monochrome painting or a monochrome sketch, tone is everything. And indeed, even when you're doing a coloured painting, tone is everything. Once you've got tone, you have something that has form. And let's just push that shadow down a bit more. So that's our basic sketch with three tones: dark tone, mid-grey and the highlight, which for now is the paper. What I'm going to do is suggest a bit of a background now, a bit of pine tree background, something like that. Remember, if we're going to do about 3 layers of this, trees that are further away are going to be lighter, fainter, trees that are closer to you are going to be a little bit darker. But we're going to start with a light layer. So we're going to vary the width, vary the angles sometimes, and then you'll get more natural looking forest. Try to avoid it looking like a little row of regimented soldiers or something like that. So that's the first layer. Now maybe this tree wants to come a little bit closer, so we can put another layer on there, and maybe this is a little bit closer, this one too. You decide, it's your forest after all. And we can add more detail bit by bit. So this one's going to be even closer still. And then underneath, around here, we'll just have a hint of foliage, underlying foliage at the base of the forest floor. So what I'll do there is just a little series of 1-inch squares with the side of the pastel overlapping at different angles, and that gives a much more natural effect. So just reload the chin and then grab hold of your board if you're on an easel, give it a good rub round and round, that softens off all your edges. And just rub that up and down for our trees. So, working with the background still, what I'm going to do is show you how to get some interesting lighting effects. So I want an early morning sun just filtering through the trees, about that angle, and then it's going to strike the side of his face and the side of his nose down here. So using the side of your white pastel, try and carefully draw 2 or 3 straight lines at an angle, the appropriate angle. That gives you a good guideline. That should do to start with. So rub those in. Now remember that in this environment, of course, you're going to get rays of sun going between the trees, not just on top of them as we've done here. So we do about 3 layers on this and it looks quite effective. So over that we want to paint a bit more of the tree, a bit more of the tree over there, and perhaps this one here. So we're starting to get the light then filtering behind these, in front of others and so on. So again, from about here this time, there's a couple of rays of light over that, give it a rub, and then a couple of more trees maybe just in front of that. So this one here is going to be a little bit closer, the light's behind it, and this one's going to be a little bit closer, the light behind that. Okay, so that's our basic background. You can add more detail of course if you want to, but I want to keep it fairly soft for this. Now to get some mist. There's a bit of mist on the forest floor, so I'll let it fade out here already using the black pastel. I'm going to use the same technique as I did here, which is little sort of haphazard squares using the white pastel to get a sense of rising mist. I find if you do squares, 3 or 4 layers of soft squares like that, rub them round and round, you'll get a much softer, mistier effect than if you try to do it round and round with your pastel, which looks a little bit artificial, which can give you, I don't know, a smoky effect or something like that. So we want a nice soft mist rather than heavy curly smoke. So again, second layer, rub it round and round, and you can add a little bit more in between the trees to get some sort of magical atmospheric lighting going. So now all the bases of the trees are disappearing into the mist. And add as many layers as you like of course, but that should do for now. So back to our wolf. Now I want to increase the amount of details using the black pastel. I can start with the fur around the eye and then work around there I think. So rounded corner of your black pastel again, so we don't want it to be too sharp. Just start to increase the amount of flecks that we have, which are basically shadows in between the different clumps of fur, be it short clumps or thick clumps. But following the original fur map, so you know the length and direction of this texture. And you can add as many layers as you like. You can even go up to as far as 100 layers of fur texture if you've got the time, the patience and so on, because the paper will take it. The paper won't smudge your pastel, it'll leave it exactly where it is, as you can see, and you can just build up those layers bit by bit and make that fur as rich, as textured, as deep as you want it to be. Or you can just do 1 layer. It doesn't really matter, it's all your own choice. For me the most important thing is at the end where we bring out the features, pop those highlights in. If you've got some nice atmospheric highlights, strong highlights here and there, people will always see those first. So you don't have to do lots and lots of layering the fur texture, but you can if you want. And of course, as always, I'd be interested to see your results. If you do this and then post your results on the Facebook page, which is coming up at the end of the video. It'd be great to see them. Everybody else can see what you've been up to. Maybe you want to do a different background. Maybe you want to add some colour. So any kind of variation you like to do on that, then feel free, be creative. But let's see what you do. And we'll have a little bit more texture around this clumpy, thicker fur below the ear, increasing those shadows between the clumps of fur, as you can see. And each layer we do gives us more texture. And then that'll fade away into that more misty, darker corner. And around the base of the ear, and again we'll gradually fade it up into that corner so we can see some of this texture, maybe the centre of the ear, maybe the side of the ear, and the rest will fade out. And a bit more texture on the top of the head. Very short flecks. So, as I said, you don't need to do a lot of textured fur detail on this. You can treat it as a sketch, or you can go on to make it a complete, almost a highly detailed drawing with your pastels. Harder pastels do work better on velour. If you use very soft pastels, if you have soft pastels at home, soft black for example, you may find it will just stick to the surface and not go right in. You have to give it a really good rub to push the pastel into the fibres to make it stick. And then it might be a little bit too loose on the surface as well. So if you've got harder pastels, then they'll do the job. So we'll leave the eye till last. So let's just refresh the area around the nose. Some of these whisker follicles. And then the nostril. So the edge of the nostril is the most important bit. It goes up to the fleshy part of the nose. Maybe a slightly darker outline underneath. Shade that in a little bit more. So I don't draw all the way around the tip of the nose. Again, that looks a little bit too cartoony. Let's keep it fairly soft around the edges. And then, as far as the mouth is concerned, we can get a little bit of sort of jagged fur on the top lip, overhanging those dark lips underneath. Like so. Let's have this darker fur around the top of the nose and the top of the head. You can use a sharper corner for this if you want to get sort of finer bits of fur going over the edge. I find just a slightly rounded corner works best for me because it gives you an overall softness to the painting or the sketch. And finally we'll do the eye. So if we do the eye to completion, what we want to do is first of all get the upper eyelid at the right angle where the eyelashes are, and then the curve of the eye looking towards our right. Nice darker shadow underneath the eyebrow, and the edges of the tear duct, so you see it's slightly greyer now in the middle of the tear duct, dark around the edges, and then finally the little curve on the cheekbone and the pupil. Now make sure the pupil is just dabbed in with the corner of the pastel, so it's nice and soft around the edges. Again, don't draw a hard line around the pupil because that can make it look a little bit too cartoony. Let's make sure all our dark details in the area that's important to us, which is for me is this bit, make sure they're nice and sharp, nicely visible before we put the highlights on. So highlights, I always think of the highlights as two stages. First of all, secondary highlights, which is going to be the highlights on the fur and so on, softer highlights if you like. And then the primary highlights, which are going to be the strong, dynamic, dramatic highlights along the edge of the nose, for example. So we'll start here and work down, I think. So just a few little soft highlights on these ridges of fur around the ears, or the ear, single. Keeping a fair bit of grey paper showing underneath. If I make this area too bright, it's going to come forward too much. I just want that to fade back. So any stronger tones you use, both black and white, are going to come forward visually, which is why I like to keep it all around this area. So we can still use secondary highlights on this fur to bring them away from the fuzzier background, but they won't compete too much with the details around the face. So still a fair amount of grey showing underneath. So it brings it forward from the background, but not too far forward. And then we can do some little flecks with the corner of the pastel in between these darker flecks on the head. Again, just to add to the texture. So do a few little flecks like that. Remember, you don't have to copy everything you see on the photograph exactly, it's all there for guidance really. So don't slave away trying to copy every single little fleck on the photograph, it's not worth it. Give that a little soft rub and then gradually increase it as we get around here. So let's have some lighter fur around the cheek. Notice we're still following the regime of length and direction. I'm not swamping the grey paper with the white, as you can see, so the grey paper is useful in something like this. A few little flecks on the fur around the cheek. And coming down towards the throat. So remember, some of these areas where we've left as grey paper around the muzzle are where we've got anatomical structure underneath. Teeth, bones, things like that, muscle, and so on. So we've got some powerful muscles around here which come forward. For the muzzle itself, we can use the flat of the pastel because the fur texture is very short. So let's have a little bit of a highlight on there. Remember, as always, do it carefully. Apply your light tones gently as you would with your dark tones in case you go too light. Obviously light tones, light pastel is easier to rub down, but always build it up softly. I think it's visually much better anyway. So light around here, lighter around this. Imagine this is an oval shape. Highlight on the top, and it pushes away down towards the nose there. So you're creating three-dimensional shapes all the time. So let's have a little ridge of light fur here. And that takes us down to the eyebrow. Eyebrows are usually lighter fur anyway, almost white, which is this area. Again, length and direction, that's the important thing. So inside of the eye, coming down towards the nose. Then we'll have the cheekbone, very short fur again. That's going to push the cheekbone forward, let that fade into the cheek. And maybe a little bit lighter because we want to show the eye, bring the eye into focus. So we have it even lighter there and the eye will come into focus. The eyeball itself, we're going to have a little bit of reflection using the corner of the white pastel, reflection from the light source, or it could be from snow around it and things like that. It's not very strong on the original photographs, but you can make it stronger. can adapt to your needs. I like to see a nice bit of shine on there. And then finally we'll do our primary highlights. So the primary highlights are going to be where the light is striking the side of his head, side of his face. So we'll start about here, and even up to this point you can make corrections. So you can see, if you get the outline of the nose, if you made a little bit of a mistake on the shape of the nose when you started, now you can change it. Make sure that line is continuous. We'll take that down to the tip of the nose. There's no breaks in there because it is one solid piece of bone. And the other point is the nose is rounded, three-dimensional. If we just leave it like that, it's highlighting almost like a cardboard cutout of a nose. So we need a little bit of light to spill over, as you would with a ball. If you highlight a ball just around the edge, it's no longer a ball, it's a disc. So to make it a sphere, you need the light spilling over just a little bit. Now, conveniently, about here, just above the nose, there's a little hollow, a little dip between the sinus bones. So we can show that with that highlight, with a little shadow underneath, and again that gives us more of a three-dimensional feeling. Bring that over a little bit, and strengthen it if you need to. If you want it a little bit shinier, then we can add more, but always start off gently in case you go too mad. That's a nice shine on there, I think. And then around the tip of the nose, and again, any of these shapes we can alter right up to the end with this final highlight. So around the tip of the nose, continuous line, remember, there's no breaks in there. Down towards the top lip, I'll just put a few little flecks of fur around the top lip, and then the chin. So get the shape of the chin first, which is something like that. So once we've got the shape of the chin, then we can have a little bit of light shining through that pale fur on the chin. Again, it helps to make it look like a rounded chin rather than a two-dimensional cutout chin. A little bit of fur around here, and then into the throat, the shape of the throat, coming down into the thicker fur on the neck. Again, make it look nice and thick with the light shining through it. And just lean back, squint at it. When you squint, you can just see tones easier. If you stare at it too long, too close up, your brain gets fuddled with the details too much. So lean back and squint, check your highlights, check your other tones. And if you're happy with that, then we can go to the finish. If you need to put more highlights, more dark tones in, then you can do that at this stage. Just have a little bit of light catching the top of his head as well, I think. So finally, what we want to do to complete that atmospheric chilly morning feeling is to have a little bit of mist. Not mist, condensation. Cold breath. A little bit of cold breath coming out of his muzzle. And the way to do that, as before, is use the side of the pastel as we did with the mist. So lots of little 1-inch squares fading out into the background. So they're always going to be heavier, the light that is, always going to be stronger when it's coming out of the muzzle, the nose or the mouth or whatever it is. And then less of it as it fades up into the environment. I usually do about 3 layers of this, but that depends on how much hand pressure you're using. You could use more. You have 4 layers, 5 layers, or maybe just 2. It depends on your individual hand pressure. So one final lean back and squint. Let's have a little bit more light coming through here. Adjust your lighting, adjust your dark, final dark and light tones. Once you're happy with it, then I'll call this one finished. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a go following either online or by getting one of the pre-lined sets you can order from the website showing on the screen. Don't forget also to visit my Facebook page, share and share. That's great for lots of people to get involved and show us the results. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.